Hey guys, Big Chonis here, coming to you guys on a Monday, November 16th. Just had the daily close of a very exciting day of Bitcoin price action. I did want to just take a look at the most near-term price action we have here. We were able to get, almost to 16.9 today. This is our higher high from our weekend consolidation, where we were kind of hovering around here. 16.1, we got as low as 15.8. I want to talk about what happened yesterday in this interesting pattern here. We had this bounce over here right at 15.7, and then we had this retrace from our top right here. As you can see, right here, we bounced at the 786 and 84, right in that little pocket there. And that was notable because even though we gave back 78% of our bounce here, we were able to hold that higher low in the intraday pattern here. And then off of that, we know what happened next. Bitcoin just took a rocket ship up almost 1,000 points, from that secondary bounce. All the way up here, $1,000 move, in the Bitcoin price action. Now, let's zoom out here and take a look about the daily candle, and let's clean it up and take a look. Zoom it out, zoom in. So again, another massive move here. Now, playing around on Twitter today, talking about a couple patterns here. Are we doing another running bull flag? What's a running bull flag? Kind of zoom out a little more here. This was a running bull flag right here, where overall we're putting in these higher lows and higher highs. Come on. Here we go. Consistently there, and then we break bullishly above it, and you can see we're doing something kind of similar so far here. We have our higher highs continuing to be put in. Oops, I'll just keep it with that, and still holding this overall parallel, which looks very similar to the last time we did that. Now, is it that easy? Right? This is just going to be that easy. We just bull advance, flag up. Right? Kind of sweat both sides of it through the day. We get some lower wicks under here. We get some upper wicks over here. Okay. We have the bodies are very consistent, more or less. Every time we break a little lower, we come back and, recover. So all the dips are being bought up. All the dips are being bought up in this move here. Now the question is that trend going to continue? Well, we have our local high here now. We'll go to the top here, and let's really zoom out here and see what we've really been able to accomplish at the stage. Because where we're at now, going back all the way to 2018, is we are still in this last little zone here of the minimalist of Bitcoin price history, that we have historically. And if we want to look at this from how much money has been up in this area, we have very little money actually was trading hands here. We were up here for, relatively speaking, such a short amount of time. Everything that was able to get sold into, bought into here, and then the back test was so significant because this was an area. I'm gonna get rid of my VPR. I'm gonna slow down my computer. This was an area where we actually, had a pretty nasty breakdown from. And then the back test of it. And that back test was stopped out right about as high as 17.1. Okay. Pretty much the wicks, though, were right around $17,000. So, today's price action, we got there pretty much on the doorstep of that. And that's kind of the last major resistance until there's a little wiggle here, 17.9, 18.2. But this is an important resistance because Compared to these, this one is much more significant. There was a bounce here from 10K, to 17K. It was a $7,000 bounce. Actually 16 and back down to 12 and then back up here to 17 where it finally was able to get stopped out. So Bitcoin no more was able to get above literally 17K, give or minus a few $100s. And once again, here we are, knocking on the doorstep here. Now, do we have to break it tomorrow? Do we have to break it this week? Not necessarily. Nothing wrong with a little consolidation. Overall, what we really need to focus on is, can we hold? It's hard to say that Bitcoin is bullish everything above 13.8 when that gives us a range of, almost 20% there, but that's it. I mean, this is a very bullish chart. Until this area, fails to hold support. And the reason why I emphasize that is because, let's get a different color here. Because of the back test here. So we have this major resistance here at 10K, many hits on it, broke above it. There's a beautiful back test of it, and then zoom, there we went. So to do a reciprocating pattern there, and being able to come back down, back test and hold and potentially advance higher, that would be the most from a clean pattern perspective, because that would basically kind of still keep that parallel channel more or less intact there. I guess I could kind of do this like there. Actually, I could even go a little higher there and a little lower there. That looks pretty good there. Okay, so that would keep that parallel channel intact, and still keep a very nice bullish structure. So because we have a 20% draw, or I shouldn't say that, we have 20% draw. It's really, look at it this way on a down there. Oops. That gives us, from a big picture, chart perspective, how much running room Bitcoin has until you can really say that, the bears have regained control of this chart. And we're nowhere near that. So what does this mean? Well, it gives us running room to do a lot of things. Any kind of consolidation would allow, say, all right, perhaps longs that have basically ridden this move up very comfortably are taking off the table, which is fine. I mean, shit, if you're up 60% on anything in a very short period of time, it'd be hard not to, take some off the table there. The other thing it could do is, because we've had this buy the dip mentality and it's worked out very well so far, that could come back to basically bite at some point, where the buy the dips just became more fuel and liquidity for people to dump onto. Now, that's the scenario of the pullback scenario. Now, why we need to consider that and why we need to keep that in our lexicon is because, historically speaking, even in major bull markets, Bitcoin has notoriously had significant pullbacks. These were 30% pullbacks. Some were, I think, as high as 40. There's a 41 right there. And there's a 41 right there, or 31 right there. Okay, so these happened during our parabolic move here, and not only are they healthy and basically allow the buy the dip mentality to work, but it flushes out the weak hands, and it allows a void to then pass through with a continuation of buying. Now, bigger investors, they're smart. They're not going to get caught off sides of a bad trade, and they're not going to allow themselves to turn a winning trade into a losing trade. So they're going to protect themselves in these scenarios here. Even if you're very bullish and long Bitcoin from a long-term perspective here, listen, it has to hurt when you take a 30 or 40% dip. And of course, you've been rewarded over the very long term, but let's face it here, even if you've been a long-term hodler, it would have been nice to take some off here and to add some here, take some off here, add some here, etc. So what would, and we're just using this, I don't know if this is the top, I don't know if this is a lull, I don't know if this is where we're going to get the big pullback, any of that, but let's get a sense here of where those areas are. So let's, again, we already talked about what a 20% pullback looks like, and that does, as put us right in that area of back testing what was major resistance back in July of 2019, which could be acting as major support, which would be very bullish. Let's go down another 10% here. So let's go to 30% pullback. So a 30% pullback, again, just from right here, right around, 16.7. Maybe I can go a little higher here. Maybe just call it 17 grand, right here. So a 30% pullback brings us to 11.4. Now remember 11.4 in your mind there, because we're going to come back to another chart. Look at that. And then what's a 40% pullback? So a 40% pullback is exactly $10,000, more or less, from where we are right here. So these are very interesting to keep in mind, because could you imagine if Bitcoin did this, came all the way back to these numbers? And remember, these pullbacks, they were relatively, I shouldn't say relatively fast. This one took June to so this one took about a month from nut top to nut bottom, with a bunch of volatility in between. This one took September 1st this one took 2 weeks, okay? And you note the higher in the parabola you get, the quicker the bounces become. So this one here, this one took like 5 days, and then this last one here, right here, Bitcoin 11.6, Bitcoin 8.6 maybe. This was like 3 days. So as you can see, the tighter and higher we got, the quicker the V reversal happened there. So maybe this correction here corresponds to something down here from a time perspective. So we can extrapolate from that maybe if this one here, and let's do a time date, was roughly, let's call it, I guess high to low, but really this consolidation 42 days, then when we do get our eventual pullback wherever it happens, it would also be basically something that's maybe half of that, maybe like 20 days or something like that, which would be a very quick, that basically be from top to bottom and then back up again. So a very quick reaction to a buy the dip situation, and much smaller, a much shorter in duration than basically this past one here. So listen, I do believe the market will be able to test this theory at some point. NASDAQ very strong today. Tesla added to the S&P 500, so that's just going to add more fuel to tomorrow's price action. It's just a situation here where market's still very strong, and even with all the COVID stuff and the lockdowns looming across America once again, we still see this rush into stocks here at a pretty amazing rate. And if you were around in 1999, 2000, I remember it vaguely, that you remember that kind of euphoria and some of that stock price action that was just insane at the very end, obviously, of that pattern. And we kind of feels like we're going something like that as well. I was doing some trading on BingBon exchange today. That's my go-to for leverage trading here. And, what I basically have been watching here is I like to keep an eye on, obviously Litecoin, the really big winner of the day here. Okay, just a tremendous move all around. Such of a good setup here. And actually, I did want to talk about it because here's an example of something where patience really pays off, where you've taken so long to accumulate, in the 20s and the 30s and the 40s. And it almost feels like this could be more of an acceleration of our breakout here. Now, what we do have here is a very clear, right, resistance and support area here. Now, this could target, if we keep rising up here, somewhere here-ish, 80, 90 bucks in the coming weeks. That basically would test this falling line of resistance. Okay, We have two. A third one would make it important. And this bottom line of support is very important and kind of dates all the way back here where we had our bottom, our initial support line. We broke it during our big crash of March, held it again, and now we're finally making the move here. So Litecoin and also have put in the higher low from the last resistance back in August there. We can also see this bouncing on the BTC pairing, which is interesting because you see where that actually happens. We go all the way back here to 17, and we can see that very corresponds to when Litecoin started to get some momentum going, right? In the year where Bitcoin was able to start really pumping, right? And that's significant because that is when Litecoin didn't go, it didn't go like parabolic or anything yet, but it started to gain a really nice base of support and begin to kind of establish itself as like, okay, it's slowly grinding. And then what was so interesting is how parabolically it was able to basically catch up to Bitcoin in that overall price action. Now we are still early in this kind of consolidation here, and there's lots of perils above, major resistance here at the 0.005 area, but that's running room, okay, for Litecoin to potentially bullishly diverge from Bitcoin. Check out Ethereum here. Now, as I was saying here, I like to see what's been the most bullish coin, obviously, and then what's been the most bearish coin, and kind of like take a look at like what's over extreme in one direction here. I'm not saying that it's a good short right now on Litecoin, but that's a pretty good day there, up 21%. I'm not saying it's good long on Uni. It happens to be the only one that's the negative right here. That's because it had such a big run earlier in the past few days and is still in its consolidation mode, as you can see there. So we would expect that to happen with some profit taking. And I expect this to look a lot like Litecoin at some point when at least there's a good chunk of profit taking after a major move here with excellent volume. So I try and get a sense of this and kind of see what's beginning to trend the opposite direction. And I was looking at Phil earlier. I want to go to the hourly chart here. And again, this is one that's been kind of pulling back, but we put these on the hourly here. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so we did a lower low from the last bounce, but now we're holding support above it. So because of that, I actually like that that area there to basically say, okay, if I was going to do a trade on this, I know my overall stop area would be somewhere around 27.3 or so, because that would correspond to breaking this support, which was broken here and then regained. So that, from a trading perspective, is like, all right, that's a clarity for a risk to reward long here, where I know my defined risk, and this is an area where I would reasonably want to stop out. And I can go a little more. I can basically just say, all right, this is now my low, and if I do like a lower leverage trade on it and say, okay, this is an area where I feel if we break this, the fourth one, then it's probably going to head lower, and I don't like the trade anymore, but at least I know a defined area here, and that's cool. And I'm doing this after 3 consecutive taps of this area, trying to find that support over the day here. So this gives me a clean make or break area. Hold above, it could be a long break below, and there's a chance we could definitely be drifting lower there. That's how I kind of approach these trades here. But I was talking about Ethereum. Let's check out Ethereum real quick here on the hourly, and then we'll go to the more detailed chart here. So again, here's another situation here where here's our low, here's our higher low, here's our higher low, and even though we're doing these pullbacks here, okay, we're still setting ourselves up with a range. Now we've had another nice bounce at 440 here to get us up to the 460s once again. Let's see what artwork I have going on here. Yes. So this was a fib, basically from all-time highs to the low. You can see we've been hovering around the 236 forever, and because of that, as long as we're above 400, the target's 587. and testing of the 382 as we go up the mountain, trying to climb up the mountain here. Okay, it's a very good looking chart. You can't really argue with it. We have a nice slope here of of support, and it almost feels like it's trying to get a little bit of a steeper angle here, but I'm not entirely convinced of that yet. And we are hitting this double top here. Remember, this was resistance we had back here, pretty significant, okay, in this zone here. You know, resistance, resistance, resistance. Support, support, and then resistance, and then once again, my arrow, resistance right here. You know, at that $400 move, and now we've kind of been flirting with breaking that a couple times here, but there's your target as long as we really hold over this area here. Now it's hard to say what these alts are going to do if and when Bitcoin decides to do something a little more drastic. Now it's been ranging up, and the altcoins have been slowly ranging with it. The question is, are we going to get a pullback, and what is that going to entail, you know, in the overall broad Bitcoin market? And these are questions that I think we're going to get answered sometime this week, because, listen, the stock market is very strong and bullish, and I think it's pulling everything up, including Bitcoin. It's risk on, and money is flowing into, you know, risk assets. And for now, crypto can be that risk asset because of its volatility. So what happens when we'll get some kind of a stock market pullback this week at some point, even if it's an intraday quick dip buying event. That's when I want to see, is there a divergence in the correlation of Bitcoin? So far, it's been incredibly strong. Okay, potentially you could argue even like leading the way, and almost diverging. I mean, from a percentage standpoint, for sure. But the whole market across the board has just been strong and bullish, so it's hard to argue with anything really diverging off it. Last thing I wanted to look at was, yeah, look at the Dow. Dow, we're on the doorstep of Dow 30K, you know, just unbelievable. Unbelievable. And if you look at this chart, just that's a parabola. You want to look at a parabola? I mean, that is a unbelievable parabolic move and parabolic chart, and possibly in the last wave of a major hyperwave, only go higher. And as long as it keeps heading higher and the S&P keeps heading higher, and I think more importantly the NASDAQ keeps heading higher, then it's hard to say, you know, where the train of the Bitcoin tracks, you know, where that potentially would end. And you know, I'll basically say that, listen, I'm bullish because I have to be, because everything from a charting perspective is such. That's fine. But you look at something like this on the NASDAQ and you think to yourself, you know, where have I seen something like this before? And it kind of reminds me of Bitcoin 2013 here, and then this is Bitcoin 2017 here, and we know what happened when the music stopped there. So who knows how more parabolic this can go, but this is parabolic, okay? Which means if we're going to race to 12K, above 12,000 points on the NASDAQ, 13,000 points, etc., it's going to happen like next year. You know, in the next year or so, because of the rate of ascent that we are climbing here. And that's just truly tremendous. So with that, remember to follow me on Twitter. I am Big Chonis. Remember to follow me on YouTube. Please give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this evening's broadcast. Hope you learned something. It's hard to say if we're still testing yesterday's highs and going to be able to break them, but it feels like the equity markets are poised to open bullishly tomorrow, and it's pretty much taking up things with it. And with the Tesla news, it feels to be pulling up all the markets tomorrow. So we'll see if we get the gap up again tomorrow, and if that gets sold into or just expanded on, and maybe we'll see Bitcoin retest or test 17K sooner than later. Because right now we listen, we haven't had a blow off top. We haven't had extremes in our higher time frames, and this is what you got to look for: is the higher time frame moves. Yes, our RSI on the 3-day is as high as it was on our last topping patterns, and as high or closing in on as high as back here when we were ranging higher and higher for those big parabolic moves. So this is the 3-day. We're getting close, but we know that the 3-day can take a week or longer in a lag, even with oversold conditions. So now we're on the higher time frame frames, looking at these things here, and then the farther we go out, even on the weekly here, we can still see that RSI once again poking above 80. Remember, 70 is the norm, so we're above 80, putting on that higher high from our last ones there, and then into the zone here where it's super ultra bull zone. And we know how high they can get, up to 90. So even the higher time frames, even though we're so in this zone now, historically speaking, we can go higher. And this is where we are right now in Bitcoin. All right, guys, Big Chonis here. Have a great night. Talk soon. Peace.